on, Foxy. It's your birthday. Not for real, just for play. This is Cree Summer, and Moana Nui will be right back.
But thank you so much for joining us. This is the Captain America Sam Wilson panel.
Yay!
Yay!
100 million.
This is going to be
$15. Yes.
15.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we are going to go ahead and get started. I am Kyoko M. I'm the author of the Black Parade Urban Fantasy series and the of Cinder and Bone science fiction series. I'm also contributed to Black Panther Tales of Wakanda, a short story anthology, as well as Sam Wilson, the Captain America, the Shield of Sam Wilson. Joining me today, Robert Jeffrey II, Glenn Paris, and Violette Meier. I will have them introduce each of themselves, tell us your talented works, and where we can find you. Starting with
Cool. Thanks for inviting me on the panel. My name is Robert Jeffrey, locally based comic book writer, prose writer, video game writer. Big thing I'm known for is Route 3 and Chaga and a bunch of other comic books. Write video games, Phantom Galaxies, prose fiction, and I am very envious of everybody up here because that is their background and I want more to do more on that. But that's me.
Mr. Paris.
So I'm Glenn Paris, trying to figure out how to get rid of this gum. So I wrote in the Black Panther Tales of Wakanda, The Underside of Darkness. I wrote a story in the Shield of Sam Wilson, the Maltese Connection. And my own stuff, I write both crime fiction and I write speculative fiction and vampire fiction and a bunch of other genres of fiction. Coming out this year is going to be a really big year. I've got 5 short stories, one in space funk with Milton Davis, The Third World. I've got a pirate story coming out, Raiders of the Middle Passage, about a slave ship that's been turned over and the slaves take over and become pirates. I have my science fiction novels coming out. I have finally, after 30 years, finished the prequel to Dragon's Heir. And that's the Exodus Heresy that will be coming out this spring. And Dragon's Heir is going to be republished under Subsume Publications. So I'm really excited about all of that. And I have to thank Ms. Kyoko M for doing the editing on those stories. And I'm not going to hog this, I'm just one last thing. The Painkillers is coming out, followed by Eye Candy. Those are medical crime stories. So that's my year. It's like, whoa.
My name is Violette Meier. I am an author of speculative fiction. I specialize in supernatural, paranormal, fantasy, and a little bit of sci-fi. I have a supernatural novel coming out at the end of the year called Signs and Wonders. And I'm also a part of a lot of anthologies there into Space Funk, which just got released.
All right, let's go ahead and start it. So our panel is same shield, but with a twist. Sam Wilson as our new Captain America. So to get started, I was aware that Miss Violette has not seen Captain America 4. So what we're going to do is find a good way.
Shame.
I know, but that's okay. It's not. This panel is about Sam Wilson in general, not just the new film. So we are going to spoil a few things, but it won't be anything intensely spoiled for the movie, just because I want to preserve that. And that's a personal choice for me. I hate spoiling people. It always makes me feel bad. So, but we will be talking about the comics. We'll be talking about Falcon and Winter Soldier. We'll be talking about the MCU in general. So if you're not all the way up and you kind of don't want to be spoiled for certain things, this would be the time to exit. But we just do that as a courtesy to let you know. I thought the best thing to do is to get started with his background. We're going to talk about both versions of Sam, so both the comics and his adaptations. But to start, we're just going to do a real quick recap so you know a little bit more about him, because some people don't always know the comic book background, so we're just going to review him. In the comics, Samuel Thomas Wilson was born in Harlem to Paul and Darlene Wilson, and used to keep and train pigeons, finding that he had an affinity for birds. He sadly loses both his parents a couple years later to violence separately, and then Sam becomes a social worker worker, and he becomes a pillar in his community. He meets Steve Rogers on Exile Island, helping him lead a rebellion. They both work together to create the Falcon persona, and then his wings and harness, and then they fight the Red Skull and the Exiles. At that point in the comics, that's around when Steve was seemingly dead, and so Sam took up the mantle in his place and became Captain America himself. In the MCU, Sam Wilson is still a social worker and a veteran, and he also counsels troubled soldiers in Washington, D.C., but in this version, he's from New Orleans. He has a younger sister named Sarah with 2 boys, and their parents are implied to have passed away like his comic book version. In this version, Captain America bumps into Sam at the Capitol, and they become friends in the second Captain America movie, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. When Steve goes on the run with Natasha after undercovering a massive government conspiracy led by Hydra, Sam volunteers to protect both Steve and Nat and help them take down Senator Pierce and Hydra. When Steve decides to stay in the timeline after putting all the Infinity Stones back, he then passes the Captain America mantle over to Sam Wilson at the end of Avengers Endgame. Sam is hesitant to accept the shield and gives the shield to the U.S. government, but then they just give it to John Walker in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show. And then they decide to reinstate Sam as Captain America after that entire thing kind of falls apart. And that ends with Sam being in possession of the shield again and having vibranium wings provided by the Wakandans. All right, so to start off with our panelists, now that we know who we're talking about, do you have a preference for which Sam Wilson that you enjoy right now? Do you like his comic book? Do you like the MCU? Do you like them both equally?
I like them both, but not necessarily equally. Yeah, I guess I'm more of a fan with the MCU one because I have more experience with that character. I also don't like and this is just me, the background or the history of the comic Sam that is steeped in tragedy. I get tired of that narrative, but what I do like about both of them is that they do have a background as far as like social work, so they're always like helping, which is cool. But I think like Sam Wilson in the MCU is just, it kind of hits more for me. I was talking earlier that there are aspects of even his costume, like I prefer the AI control robot Red Wing versus then him having the telepathic connection. But like I said, that's for me. But there are definitely aspects of the MCU, and you kind of hit on one that I feel that they have done a disservice to the MCU Sam Wilson, where, like for instance, they wanted to go the route of giving the Captain America mantle to a homicidal opportunist rather than giving it to the black man. But then also in this most recent one, we had Sam once again questioning, should I be Captain America? And he did that for an entire TV series when he should have when they should have had him accepted. So I think that there are definitely things that they have done well within the MCU which have made me kind of accept the character, but there are other aspects to it where it's just like, we need some more work, to be done. It's nothing against Mr. Mackey, but I always feel that sometimes I think the writing is a little lacking, but that's kind of my preference. But I know like a lot of people love him from the comic books. So yeah.
So I'm the old guy on the stage again, but I remember the Falcon from late 60s, early 70s, when he would swing around like Daredevil and Spider-Man on a cable. He didn't have wings, and then eventually he got these sort of glider wings that opened up under his arms, and he would sort of glide, but he couldn't really fly. I really like the MCU version of Sam Wilson. Number one, because my wife is from New Orleans, and I'm supposed to say that. but she's not here, but she's got ears everywhere. But I actually like, the idea that he wrestles with imposter syndrome. That's kind of what was the signature of Marvel since the 1960s. One of the reasons Spider-Man was so popular was because he had real problems. I actually kind of like that. The trauma, is sort of separate. From Superman to Batman to Spider-Man, their parents or the aunts or whoever their guardians are have got to die terribly, for them to be sparked into heroism. But I kind of like the idea that he doesn't have any superpowers, but he goes up against people with superpowers. And the fact that he wrestles with, I could get them by drinking this potion, and he doesn't do it. And he wrestles with that, but I think in the latest movie, I'm not going to spoil anything, but he kind of embraces that, and I actually did like that. So I like the MCU version. Awesome. Long-winded way of saying it, but yes, I do that.
I am not a true Captain America fan, I love Spider-Man, but my son loves Captain America. I actually don't like the idea that he has no powers. I don't like that they have a black hero that he has no powers. There's nothing special about him, but a personality that struggles, well, should I do it the hard way? And I don't enjoy that. It's like, why can't he be like the other heroes? I mean, even like Batman has money. So he doesn't have superpower, but his superpower is financial. But he has none, and I guess the Falcon, is that really a power? How is that helpful?
I have no idea.
How is that helpful in any way? So, no.
Well, we know where we stand there. As far as I go, I like both versions, but I do lean towards Mackie just because I think it was a very interesting thing for me is watching Mackie come up, because people are now realizing, because he's now popular, they went back and watched some of the movies that they've watched for 20 years and don't realize that boy was putting that work in. He was sitting there doing 700 bit parts to get to Falcon. It was 20 years of bit parts for him to get there. So then when they chose him, it was just a really nice moment for me of like, oh yes, an actor I really like, just pounding away at this career, and he finally got to do something, and he's a natural at it. I think he is naturally charming, naturally funny. His integrity is really what makes me stand by this character in particular, is that they recognize that things that Steve was good at is bring people together, being willing to sacrifice himself no matter what the cost would be. But they identified in Sam that his sympathy is his superpower, in terms of his character, not in terms of what he does, plot fighting, all those things. But the reason that people are drawn to him is that he is so sympathetic and so compassionate to everyone around him, even people who in no way deserve it. He is always patient and kind and willing to just jump on that grid. Same as Steve. My favorite line for him was, I do what he does, just slower. I was like, oh, to me, that worked. But like I said, I'm like Robert. I'm like, hey, that's a me thing. So here we are. But that segues into my next question. So what do you feel makes Sam Wilson the man that he is? What defines him as a character, do you feel? And that can be either version.
So this, for me, it goes back to the social work aspect, which is something that I like that they carried across from the comics to the TV series and the movies. There's that sense of empathy, and then you have the added component of him having a background as far as counseling. So it's just like, mostly when you get a lot of heroes, and this is after watching like Invincible, where people were bloodied up and killed, and the push is we don't go more into the emotional kind of mind side of things, so I like that they have established that with him, and it gives him a sense of empathy when he's saving the world, he's saving the people that he does. So I think that sense of empathy and that sense of like selflessness, sort of like Steve, but in a different way, I think it makes him the man that he is.
I think, just going to the movie, my favorite line was when Harrison Ford says, "You're not Steve Rogers." And he says, "You're right, I'm not." That could have been elaborated so much more. I mean, he doesn't have the superpower. He's not the Boy Scout. As Kyoko says, he's empathetic, but, he doesn't suffer fools either. And he will take somebody down because he realizes, he's not the Hulk, he's not bulletproof. You don't take chances when you can get hurt. Okay, you get the job done. And he's got the Wakandan wings, he's got the vibranium shield, and he knows how to fight. And he has practiced. As Kyoko said, he put in the work. If you look at the Winter Soldier series, he practiced throwing the shield. He practiced combat. He works with people who do have superpowers, and his superpower is figuring stuff out. And when I was asked to write this, I actually rewrote this 4 times for Marvel. They liked the first one, but they wanted to go in a different direction. So I took it in a different direction. They wanted to go a little bit different. They wanted to include this particular character, the power broker. So I had to write some of that in. And I wanted to elevate Sam Wilson, my Captain America. I wanted to elevate him to a world-class superpower. superhero. So, I kept trying to thread in Dr. Doom in there, and they kept trying to take it out, and I kept sticking it back in there. But I think I still got a little touch of Dr. Doom in my story, so I'm okay. I'm right. But the powers that they have, and the villains and the situations that they're facing, I think that they do a disservice to a lot of black superheroes, even in Marvel. And I think Marvel treats them a little bit better than DC, if I can say that. If I can, I just said it anyway. But the idea of somebody like Luke Cage, who's bulletproof and strong, and he fights people on the street. I mean, he should be, fighting AIM or Doom's people or something like that. I mean, he's that powerful. Why does he just have to fight thugs on the street in Harlem? I mean, elevate him. And I think that they did that with Sam Wilson, even without superpowers, and they had him struggling. He could take those powers on. He could equal Steve Rogers. He chose not to do it because he didn't want to alter himself. He wanted to maintain that humility that goes along with being human and being vulnerable, and I like that.
I can appreciate that. I never looked at it that way, but I can appreciate someone who's a true humanitarian, just an everyday man trying to make a difference in the world around him. So I appreciate that about the character. I still think he should have real powers, but it's very noble that he does it, and he does it with his natural strength.
I think for me, it's the defiance. I think that he's a very defiant person, but defiant in a really good way. Like, I have a spine for a reason. I'm not just being difficult to be difficult. There's a moment in Captain America 4, and again, this is not a spoiler, but after they have that conversation, and he says something to the effect of, "You're done, son." And then every black person in the audience felt that. Yeah. Every person, every black person felt that. Because when people who are not black get upset with us, we stop being a person. We become a thing. Mm-hmm. And so that son, that condescending, patronizing son, the fact that Sam heard him say it, walks out furious, he called me son. And I was just like, that's what I'm talking about. Wow. That's the character I will stand in line for hours for. That is a great scene. It really, really highlights something that they don't want to talk about, which is microaggressions. Microaggressions still happen. Yeah. I'm freaking Captain America. I saved all of you. I beat Thanos. I beat Hydra. I beat everybody else. You still called me son. Now, if Captain America, Steve Rogers, was standing right here, you think he would have said son to him? Do you think Steve would have tolerated it if he would have said son to him? Absolutely not. And that, to me, is really what Falcon represents, is that innate defiance of, like, the system is telling me I don't belong here. The system is telling me I can't do this. You know what? I'm going to do it anyway. You don't want me here? I don't care. I want to be here, and I fit in, so I'm going to be here. That is just what I have decided for myself as a character. And to me, that, I think, makes a different statement from some of the other heroes that we've had before, because it is so much about, y'all say that I don't belong, you know what, I'm gonna belong anyway. So I think that that's a wonderful aspect of his character. But bringing that up, we're gonna move a little bit more, because there's an issue, I think, that is very, very tied to Sam Wilson and his reception, especially for the show in particular, which is gonna be Isaiah Bradley. So I'm gonna give you guys a very, very brief overview of Isaiah Bradley in the comics versus the MCU version that was introduced in Falcon and Winter Soldier. It is going to spoil a little bit, so just letting you know out of the gate. So in the comics, Isaiah Bradley was subject to Project Rebirth, which was a project to recreate Steve's super soldier formula. And then 300 test subjects were all abducted and tested against their will. And during a field mission to Europe, Bradley emerges the sole survivor of his test group. He then steals a costume and a shield, and he goes in a suicide mission to destroy the super soldier efforts. And after he is able to do that, they assassinate the guy in charge, and they capture, but unfortunately he does get captured. He is later released, but it is a very, very long time. He's been in prison from 1943 to 1960, and then he's eventually exonerated and released. So in the MCU, the version that they decided to do is one where both Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes were investigating this eco-terrorist named Carly Morgenthau. And they, when they come up against a wall, Bucky reveals that Isaiah Bradley is someone he ran into when he was still the Winter Soldier. And they go and they learn his story. And so basically in the MCU version, it's heavily implied that Isaiah was dosed during the Tuskegee experiments, and he did covert missions until he went off grid to rescue his friends. And they decided, oh, well, you went against orders, so we're just going to imprison you for 30 years and experiment on you the entire time. So thanks for serving your country. After they do that, it's about 30 years into his sentencing, a nurse took pity on his imprisonment and faked his death and snuck him out of the prison. After that, he goes underground and he becomes just a regular civilian that nobody knows about until Sam decides to, he basically, at the very end of Falcon and Winter Soldier, he gives all of that information to the people. They create a museum in Isaiah Bradley's honor, which I just thought was just so touching. I cried like a baby. But now that you have a little bit of background here, I wanted to talk just a little bit about what Isaiah Bradley means to not only the overall MCU narrative, but did he have an impact on you when you saw the MCU adaptation of him? So let's start with Mr. Jeffrey.
So for me, strangely enough, like I have more history with Isaiah Bradley than with Sam Wilson in the comic books. I read this series, Truth, which his miniseries, which he's introduced in by Kyle Baker, and it's a masterpiece. It's one of the best things that Marvel has ever done. I sometimes wonder, like, who at editorial gave Mr. Baker, the opportunity to just go ham. And his experience is definitely coded in the Tuskegee experiment. Baker's art style it's drawn in such a way that there are times where they make some of the characters look kind of monstrous, and it's this thing of like balancing the perception of white America with black America with, how we actually are with when he gets his serum. But it's a really good story. I recommend everybody read it. He matters because he shows how effed up this country can be to people who care for it. And when you see the process of him and the other soldiers going through that process of being subjected to being, as I hate to say this, like test subjects, eventually, which will, and they all die. A lot of them die. And that's something that we don't get in the MCU, but it's kind of like hinted at. I think it matters because it shows that these soldiers were fighting for a country that treated them like crap. And it's one of the most disturbing things about the book. And I think in the MCU, they go there, but the book definitely goes there more. And then there's this at the end of the book, there's this appreciation for Bradley from the black community where we see, like, there's this great panel where you go to his house. You know how like you see Black Jesus on the wall in the family and everything when you go to any black family's house? It's all these pictures of him with various celebrities over the years. So it shows that we know the history and we appreciate him for what he's done. So for me it matters that even with the self-sacrifice, he kind of like surmounted that in a way, but it also shows that this is what we have gone through collectively. And as far as the MCU, I love more so, there are moments in the movie where, when they lock him up, I was like, visceral moment for me in the theater where they locking his brother up for doing something that he, whatever. But he matters for a few reasons, but more so for me, his depiction in the comic books. So.
Yeah, so my issue is, that, the Tuskegee experiment, just rings really deeply in my soul. But, the history of this country is that, as chattel, as property that was owned, anything that you came up with was also owned. And we will probably never know all the inventions, all the creations that our ancestors actually contributed to this country. It's only been in the 21st century that we're beginning to hear about, the invention of the traffic light, the gas mask,
The home security system.
the home security system, vaccinations. Okay, vaccinations. It's only now that we're beginning to hear about these things, and the more you dig, the more you find. That we've contributed, and we seem to get kicked in the pants for everything that we do. The Red Tails never lost a single escort, not one, throughout the whole war. in the space race. You had a bunch of black women as human computers, and the astronaut said, I believe what they're telling me more than what your calculations and the computers are doing, because computers then were very primitive, and these women were amazing math geniuses, and you didn't hear about that. I mean, that was 1960s. Okay, we're hearing about that in the 2020s. I mean, it's the number of things that have just been buried. It's not like no one knew; they were buried. And to see a Captain America, and to hear people say he doesn't deserve to be Captain America. What is this country coming to? They're going to make this man. So, this is really good, and I think we really need to rally behind this. Because, damn it, we earned it.
I think this country is full of unsung heroes, especially black people. And I think this character is important, especially during our current political era that we're in, because people are working to rebury things that have come to light. They're working overtime for people to not know the great contributions that we've had. And I think that character is important because it makes us always be diligent about teaching your children your history, where you came from, to keep the stories alive. So even when people did not receive their flowers in life, they could still receive honor and recognition in death. And I think that character is vital, especially what's happening in our world right now.
Definitely. For me, I think Isaiah matters because, and again, you welcome to stop me if you noticed this before. It was the first time to me the MCU put its foot down on an issue. Most of the time they do the generic good things of like, oh, crime is bad, this is bad, corruption is bad, that kind of stuff. But this was the first time to me that they overtly addressed a racial issue in a mainstream film. Most of the studios don't want to do that because they feel like, oh, stepping on toes, or oh, I'll still take the racist money. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of them don't want to admit that. They will still take it's still green to them. They don't care. And to see them be like, you know what? I am going to put my foot down. I am going to say, this is how we treat black people in this country, and it is unacceptable. Now, even if it's just on that, like, again, another thing, I loved them showing the microaggressions because people don't know what those are. They don't know what they're defined as, and they're not paying attention to how frustrating and how it snowballs. So that scene in Falcon and Winter Soldier, when they're just having an argument about Isaiah, and those cops walk up on Sam, and they're just talking. They're nothing about that.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh, it's Falcon. Oh, now it's not okay that I was harassing this. Oh, but I found out you're famous, so now I'll stop. No. Seeing that made me really proud and really angry, of course. But I love seeing that they were willing to acknowledge it, because every other place that I've seen in terms of like, it'll be gently implied or it'll just be a shot that you're supposed to notice or something. But it was actually them sitting down and having like, being like, no, this is wrong. We don't need to be doing this to these people.
That cop scene reminded me of the 5 Heartbeats, where they get pulled over and he's like, oh, so y'all sing something.
Yes, that just it just hit so hard. I appreciate, like I said, I think it matters because it is just refreshing to see a studio being willing to do that, knowing that people are gonna get mad, they're gonna have their torches and their pitchforks, but you were willing to still stand up and say that, which I just absolutely love. So that segues into my next question, which is, why does a black Captain America matter? If he matters to you, you are welcome to say that he doesn't, and we will discuss that as well. Ms. Jeffrey.
Sam Wilson matters to me more so than the mantle, because one of the things that I have an issue with when it comes to Marvel and that character is that sometimes I feel that it goes into the corporatization sometimes. Let me preface this. When you get a chance to bring writers like all y'all, because I've read all the stories, and I've read like up to your story in the book. It
You
gives
stopped at my story?
What was it?
You stopped at my story?
No, like literally.
Throwing shade.
No. I finished the story.
I'm kidding.
It's the thing of, you got to have the right creators in the room to have the discussions that we're like having here today. So before Sam Wilson took on the mantle of Captain America, I didn't necessarily care too much about the character. I'm just being real. And I think that having Sam in that role, written by people who understand his struggles, in addition to people who will do the research to understand his struggles, that's when Black Captain America matters to me. Like you said, those scenes, those parts from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the only reason we got those conversations was because of the showrunner. The showrunner was a brother. And the only reason, and he was one of the writers of one of the co-writers of the movie.
Perfect. I was going to ask that. I hadn't had time to look it up. Okay.
So that's the stuff that I look for, who's behind the scenes, because there have been various instances of Sam Wilson as Captain America where he's written, it's just like, y'all didn't have us in the room. So that's the only time to me, when it's us or when it's people who have actually taken the time to do the research into why does a Black Captain America matter. Outside of that, I could take it or leave it. I'm just being like, that's just me.
We are here for honesty.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Again, old guy. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always heard that America's a melting pot. And everybody comes here and contributes, and everybody's appreciated. I didn't see that appreciation. And what I see is a pot that takes advantage of all the ingredients, but the cream always rises to the top. And that's all you see when you look in the pot. This is a situation where they finally showed some of the ingredients that actually give it flavor. And we have given America flavor, from music to art to politics to science to medicine. We keep adding, we keep contributing, and it gets buried. You get others who will do cover versions of our music and become famous, and the original artist just never gets acknowledged. This just has been happening over and over again for centuries now. Finally, you're getting here, and again, the not taking that super soldier formula. It's like, I don't need no stinking enhancement. I'm good enough as I am, and that's the way I see it, and I like that. And he proves it. And the only enhancement that he has comes from Wakanda, which is another thing I like. He's got a vibranium shield. He's got vibranium wings with technology that the U.S. can't match, and it's ours. I like that. He doesn't need to be chemically enhanced. He's good enough. In fact, he's better than most. So I like that.
You're very passionate about that. I personally think all Black heroes matter. It doesn't matter if Captain America is my thing or not. I think he's important, because I think it's important to have visibility, to show Black men as powerful people who are intellectually sound and are unlimited in possibility. So I think all heroes matter. So the more we have them, the more I think our boys and girls can grow up saying that this is a part of my imagination, and everything is limitless for me. I just think that's really important. And I also think it's important to create our own Black heroes, and not always just make a Black version of a white hero.
Yes.
And when we do create Black heroes, to support Black heroes, so our children to get used to it.
Yes.
Because my son is a massive Spider-Man fan, and I remember when we first started coming to these cons, I started buying him comic books of Black heroes, and Black kids kind of feel weird about it because they're like, but it's not Spider-Man.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, but just read it anyway. So I used to just make them read it anyway. Read it anyway. Because, and then they find out, like, this guy's cool too. And it's important for Black people to promote Black artists and to make our own Black heroes so they can be everyday heroes like the ones that we grow to love.
normalization is a huge part of it. I definitely, and so I love that you brought that part up. So when I was a kid, I was a Barbie girl, but like I was weird. I'm a writer, so again, my Barbie's like fighting zombies. She's not doing bombs. She's not in a dollhouse. She's fighting Batman and shit. Anyway, the doll that I chose was funny because I'm sure my mom brought me all kinds of them, but I gravitated towards this little Pocahontas doll for some reason. So I took all her little outfit off, and I would put her in these little things, and she'd have little adventures, and I'd make little OCs and things. And so the reason I bring that up is at the time, I had this very interesting childhood where I would see women of color, but I didn't see black women in those contexts of like, I like science fiction a lot. So when I was a kid, my parents are huge sci-fi fans. So we went to, Godzilla 98, we went to The Fifth Element. The Fifth Element is literally holy writ in my house, by the way. And so I grew up with like, not getting to see enough women in color in action roles and in things like that. So I turned to comics because that is where I would finally get to see not just women getting to be in those roles, but women of color. So I remember the first time I opened a comic and I saw Cecilia Reyes. Cecilia Reyes, if you don't know, is a character from X-Men, and she was dark-skinned with cornrows. I lost it as a kid, opening a comic and seeing a dark-skinned Afro-Latina superhero. It was the coolest thing I had ever seen in my entire life. I've read that comic cover to cover till it fell apart. And so that's, to me, what I really think is important about Sam in particular. I also agree that I don't like that we have to take heroes and put them in that white person's position. But in this instance is one of like, oh no, I agree with that. I was like, no, absolutely. This is, like I said, the statement that I saw on Tumblr one time that I adore was, John Walker is what America currently is. Steve Rogers is what America wishes it was. Sam Wilson is who America should be. And I went, that's what I'm talking about. That is why I think that Sam matters. Who we could be if we weren't garbage is Sam Wilson. When there's a scene at the end, and I'm not going to say who says it or whatever, but there's a scene at the end of Captain America 4 where they have a very, very great conversation about him talking about feeling like he's never enough. And I agree with you. I want to see Sam stop struggling. I want to see him kick ass. I want to see him accept everything about how great he is, because everybody around him is telling him how freaking great he is, except for, Harrison Ford. Who cares?
Well, never mind. Let's spoil something. I'm not going to say it.
But I think that that's why he matters, is that these kids can grow up seeing that position, seeing that character, and be like, oh, look, he looks like me. Oh, man, maybe one day I can grow up and I can be in a movie. Oh, maybe I can grow up and I can write a comic book. Oh, maybe I can write up and make a book someday. That's what I think is the optics on this, is why it matters, why he needs to be front and center on these things and showing us that he is more qualified to be Captain America than Steve was, to be honest, at this point. Because Steve didn't have all those different things that he had to overcome. He was a good-looking, blonde-haired, blue-eyed white boy. And so, there was a whole aspect that he never had to deal with that Sam does. And I think that something you said earlier I love is that people talk about, when they talk about DC versus Marvel, DC often writes characters, we'll talk about the original, like, let's say, Silver Golden Age. People write DC characters as something to aspire to, of like, oh, okay, they're billionaires, they're gods, they're lords, they're aliens, things like that. And you see them and you sympathize with them because it's something like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I could do that? Right. Whereas Marvel often is rooted in the realism. So your Spider-Mans, people who have horrible lives and are tired and traumatized and all these different things, but it adds a layer of sympathetic that we as the readers can gravitate towards. So like I said, I like both. But for those reasons, I aspire to DC, but I relate to Marvel. And so seeing Steve pass on the mantle to Sam, and seeing Sam just being willing to say, you know what, I am in a country that wants me dead. I don't care. I think that I'm going to still do the right thing. I'm going to save the people who are in harm's way. I don't care if they thank me, because it is the right thing to do. I think he's one of the only altruistic characters in the MCU, and I think that he matters for that very reason. We have characters that are cool, like Tony, and we have characters that are sympathetic and things like that, but I think that's his strength, is that he wants to stand in defiance of knowing what this country is, knowing it wants him dead, and being like, you know what, too bad. I'm still willing to do the right thing, because that's just what I do. It's just what he is. I'm
sorry. This is why I love doing panels with Kyoko M. The passion. But there's something interesting, and we're kind of dancing around it a little bit, there's a difference between justice and the law. Okay?
Big.
Over the past 250 years, we've had laws that were not just. And I don't think that there's anybody who would argue otherwise. And it's been shown over and over again. But I think that Steve Rogers adhered to the law to a fault. But Sam Wilson adheres to justice. Is this right?
Absolutely.
Is this right? I may end up in jail, but this is the right thing to do. And I think that's an important statement to be made.
Well, even think about the difference between Captain America 2 and 4. So now Steve got in trouble because he was trying to help Bucky and everything else, but think about how much less trouble he got in. He did the exact same thing. My best friend was framed for something, I'm sorry, Civil War I should say. My best friend was framed for something he did not do. He's been brainwashed and it's not his fault. Well, I'm gonna go save him because it is the right thing to do. It was not. He was not in control when he was framed for this.
And
Sam did the exact same thing. And what happened to him? Get kicked off the case in 5 minutes. So, son,
right?
Son,
and,
exactly.
And let's go ahead and say it. It's a euphemism for boy. You know.
That's exactly what it was. That's why, like I said, when he and I went to the Cap 4 premiere together, actually, and you felt it. You felt it when the line was said. You heard everyone in that theater just tense because they had almost every single one of us has something. There's some moment where someone did that to you and you just had to, and it's worse because I think, and that's something that I love about Sam. He also knows he can't be the angry black man. That is something Steve never had. Steve can be righteous and angry, but I am a dark-skinned black man in this Captain America suit. I also don't get to be mad because y'all they notice that. They see that.
Got to bite your tongue till it bleeds.
Oh, till it bleeds. My goodness gracious. I just thought that was so great. Do you have a question? Oh, sorry. I thought you had a question. You're good. That's what we're going to do next. So we're the other panel ran pretty long. So are our next folks in here yet or no? So you are
The next one, I'm 1 o'clock.
Okay, perfect. So all I would do is very briefly, if anyone had a question they wanted to ask the panel, otherwise we are going to transition. Yes, ma'am.
I have so many questions. I'm going to try and keep it brief. So one of the things I noticed about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Captain America and the Winter Soldier, and the movie is all of those nuanced discussions that were had amongst black people. And I remember thinking, it's black people writing this because there's no way they get that right. Right. And so I'm wondering, because, you know, even though Marvel seems to be more aware than DC sometimes, do you think that the success of Coogler's Black Panther led them to be more willing to take those chances?
You're going to laugh.
Talk about that.
Voila! If I had more time, we were going to get to that. You are absolutely correct. That is what happened. So all the time, he and I, we've been writing for years. All of us have been writing for years. And so it was very interesting watching this space when Black Panther came out, because it was finally what we have all known as black people. We love science fiction. We've always loved science fiction. We love fantasy too. But the rest of the world, it goes, black people don't watch that. Yes, we do. What's wrong with you? We watch the same things that you watch, you crazy people. But I absolutely think that
Martin Luther King asked Uhura to stay on.
Yes, that's a real factoid that we've done on so many panels.
Right.
But what I'm getting to is that when Black Panther came out, it finally was them opening the jar and realizing, hey, guess what? Black people like speculative fiction. We've liked it forever. It's not just Octavia Butler. It's not just like a handful of authors. They're everywhere. And so finally, the lens turned away from that stupid, oh, black people don't watch speculative fiction thing. And it finally was opening up the door for mainstream stuff. Now, indies, no, we've been here. We've been doing it. We've been doing it on our own. We don't need y'all. But that, to me, is what signified a scene change, where they finally were like, oh, okay, 1.3 billion, I can stop saying that the key demographic is white guys from 18 to 34. I can finally actually go look at the data and see the demographic and go, no, people of color are making the same content that we are making. They're just not, getting shouted out by Marvel or getting shouted out by DC. So I 100% agree. I think that the success of Black Panther is what allowed us to get to Sam. That part, I think Sam was always going to be here, but them feeling confident enough that he could perform in his own solo series and his own solo film, I definitely think that was influenced by the success of Black Panther for sure.
And the other thing about Black Panther is think about the success overseas.
Yes.
Korea, China, Saudi Arabia.
Who hates everything?
Okay. I mean, the amount of money that Black Panther made overseas, okay, opened a lot of people's eyes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to have everybody just rattle off where we can find you, and we are going to wrap up so he can go ahead and get set up. So please start with Jeff.
RobertKJeffrey.com, RobertKJeffrey.com, website, that's about it.
GlennParis.com. Glenn is with 2 N's, Paris is with 2 R's, no H in there. 2 R's and 2 N's because I'm double trouble.
VioletteMeier.com. I also have a table out there, and I also have a panel.
I have a table. Everybody's got a table.
Except for me. I'm leaving. Sorry. But they have tables.
Yeah.
All right. I'm Kyoko M. You can find me at SheWhoWritesMonsters.com. Thank you so much for joining us. You guys have a wonderful day.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then, when they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves the Republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah. Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No regard for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. We will. So if we put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course, versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course, cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system. Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No regard for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will.